piece together and then see what that number looks like. See how those things look like, because there's, if I use an example of Pine Creek, if you're gonna put 10 classrooms there, and there's some other things that are slated possibly for Pine Creek or slated for Pine Creek or possibly for Pine Creek, how does some of those things play out? And I think it's, again, educational disruption. I'm just using the word educational disruption. Let's make sure that we're not creating such an educational disruption point that it really hurts the academic achievement. So, again, I know we could probably go all night on these things, but I think as a starting point, let's, based on some of the tranches that we've created or some of the general directions that we've created, let's have leadership come in and say, here's how we think it might play out today. There's probably more information. Remember, this is, we're not building a city overnight. Mrs. Johnson.
Well, I am appreciative of my board colleagues, including Colonel Harding, your expertise in all areas relevant to the bond and finances exceeds my own professional. So I'm so grateful for your sharing your thoughts in regard to priorities with this hope for bond and what it may allow us to do. John F. Kennedy said that to govern is to choose, and that's what we're doing. And I feel very comfortable with the logical, thematic organization of the projects. Maybe there's some that fall into more than one category, but the overriding thing has always been academic achievement. That's why we have to address growth, so that academic achievement can continue. And safety and security, I mean, the events of the past week highlight just exactly how important that is to the atmosphere that allows learning to go on. So I'm in full accord with those categories, if you will, in which to consider where to rate things. I'm much more comfortable with saying these are the board's priorities, these themes, as opposed to specific projects, and allowing them to determine which best meet those themes. I am in agreement with, elementary school first and foremost, etc. I mean, the specifics I trust because I agree with what everyone has said, and I know that history has shown the wisdom with which things are done. So, because I won't be here next board meeting, I wanted to say this just so that you'll know this is where Tracy stands. And I think you all beautifully stated things I would ask and what I feel. So
thank you. Let me throw one more overlay as a possible consideration for the administration, and that is there's the GCNRC report out there. That was the construct. I realize that we did not do a high school. There's a GCNC report that's a construct out there. And I think within some of that framework that administration should have some consideration of those as they look at some of these. Does that make sense? And maybe the one thing that jumps out at me is number one on the list was air conditioning at Douglas Valley. The GCNC said the number one priority was air conditioning at Douglas Valley. Now, one of the things that I would throw out on that is, if it's, Mr. Stevens would know this better than I, trying to do something like that on an Air Force base, or Colonel Harding especially.
It's a historic building too. Be careful.
That's going to be the case with all the improvements at
Air Academy.
But Air Academy was number 2 on the list. And
Yeah.
who will forget the video which showed water coming through the ceilings? That's unacceptable.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Strebe, I guess what I'm looking for at this point is clarification. What exactly are we asking administration to do? Because I am in agreement with Mrs. Johnson that I like the discussion we've had here tonight, and like I said, I started naming item numbers and dollar amounts because it was helping me to frame, are we asking them to do the impossible, or do we need to go back and reframe our conversation? I'm comfortable with where our conversation has landed, so I'm asking at this point, do we need administration to go further with this exercise before the bond passes, or are we comfortable with where we stand tonight? Another thought that came through my mind is, if we are comfortable with where we stand tonight, do we want to pass a resolution stating, or is the conversation we've had here this evening recorded in the minutes good enough and acceptable for administration, or should we put together something that's a little bit more formal document that so that we make sure that we're clear about what we're communicating to Dr. Hatchell and his folks?
I don't know if that's, this is me speaking, I don't know if that's necessary right now to go through the process of a resolution and so on and so forth. I think we've had a conversation. I think we've asked Dr. Hatchell and his staff to, based on some of the discussions that we've had, considering growth, considering safety security, considering student achievement. I know I threw in kind of an overlay on that with the GCNC to go ahead and go through this, and based on the information, we always reserve the right to be smarter today or tomorrow than we are today. And, or what do they say, to be smarter today than we were yesterday. We always reserve the right to be smarter today than we were yesterday. And start that and put that together, and then put some legs to it and show, here's the three tranches as we know it today. Because again, we might find out a couple of years from now that assessed value jumps a whole lot, and the ability to issue bonds is greater. It could be higher. It might be lower. You never know what that really looks like. So I would like to see administration come back, and based on the conversation that we've had, them to put together the first start, again, based on their expertise. And then we can take a look at it and go from there. And ultimately, where we need to land is, assuming the bond passes, we will have created a certain amount of framework. They will have, administration will have come back and said, here's what we know today. And then, assuming that it passes, because remember, as soon as it passes, you try to mobilize the construction management team and hire the folks and bring them on pretty quickly. And as Dr. Hatchell said, that's the first thing that they're going to do, is take our construct and say, well, Glenn, what you said is dumb. I'm probably sure that they probably won't say it that way, but I'm pretty sure they won't say it that way.
He can say that.
But yeah, you can say that.
Your
but-
wife can say that.
And she, yeah, and you can too. I think you get the idea, though, that here's what it is, and then remember, we have to approve all the dollars and all the projects, and that's what we're going to be seeing, and we're going to rely on them to create critical path with all of those projects inside of the framework that we've established. And I know the fun part, at least for me, the fun part has been doing the mental gymnastics of this. It's really, really, you all know the mental gymnastics, you see a little bit of excitement of like, okay, I'm going to plug this and plug that and see what happens. Mental gymnastics is really fun because this has huge impact on kids, and that's what we do. The exciting part will be administration come back, and then we'll get to go do some more mental gymnastics and start fine-tuning. And then about the time we think that we've fine-tuned it, assuming the bond passes, the construction management team takes their shot at it. But we will have said, just think of one of the things that we just said, formula dollars first. We know that's going to happen. We've said that from a security standpoint or security and safety, we think there's some things that are going to have to happen on that. And formula dollars, $14.5 million. Security, safety, $2.8 million, the entryways, $1 million for the Da Vinci Academy. We set an elementary school at $21 million. We set a middle school at $47.5 million. We've already started down the road of creating what some of the structure looks like. We'll fine tune it as soon as we see. It's easier to work with something that's in front of you than something that's solely in your mind. That's what, does Dr. Hatchell, my
Yeah, very well
said. A
said.
certain amount of clarity that.
Absolutely. I have one question. I just really have one question. I'm a little unclear. Is the ILC a board priority?
I I think Mrs. Bullock's point that can't do anything with Challenger until that happens is well taken.
Okay.
It is.
That was the one thing I just
Okay.
wasn't really. I
That
just
was,
had a question.
I'm not entirely sure that it is, but I think it might be because of the dependency. The priority of Challenger, I think, or I'm, you know, of the whole situation over at that existing school is the priority, therefore I think it might drive the ILC up there, but I would be also interested in options.
What do you mean?
I would be interested in, I would be interested in knowing, well, what happens if we don't include it in the first issuance, I guess is my question. What if we didn't include it in the first issuance? What does that make possible? And also, what does that eliminate, again?
The process of governance is choosing.
Yes,
And the ILC is $12 million.
yes.
And $12 million in the ILC ultimately, with that $12 million plus the work on Challenger, I think Challenger was 1.8, and there might be a couple of other little things. So the $12 million spend in round one on the ILC is really like a $14 million spend because of that dependency, and that doesn't accomplish growth. So.
And that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
those programs that are going to go in it are not out of space yet.
No.
The conditions are not ideal, but they're not out of space. So again, to me, that would be a slightly lower tier priority, but I have a feeling that the dependencies for, you know, Challenger are going to drive it to the top.
Because I wonder, I'm gonna ask our technology guru over here, is Challenger one of those older schools that has the outdated technology that's on your first phase?
Yes, it will be priority 1.2.
Yeah, see, and you don't want to do any kind of wiring or whatever to Challenger if you're gonna be ripping a whole bunch of stuff apart.
So that.
Well, that goes back to the construction management team.
Yeah.
And the project plan and the project managers
Right.
that put together a path. And I like scope, I remember that from my, you know, the scope of what is the most effective and efficient use of the dollars. And so, so I appreciate it. I mean, I think I have some really good notes of your direction. That was the one thing I was a little unclear on, is we put this together. Is that a top priority ILC, or is it not? And I think I just heard.
Because it really isn't, does it?
I think what you heard is yes, maybe.
Yeah. It's kind of,
Yes, kind of, maybe.
it's kind of sort of.
Technically, the answer to your question in my mind is no.
Yeah.
So,
It might be.
but it might get driven higher based on dependencies. So don't base your plan around it, base your plan around those other pieces that have to do with growth and academic support. And then once we see what our needs are at Challenger, it may drive it up. Does that make sense?
Because Challenger is one of our technology schools, and if their technology is outdated, that's a little bit of a problem.
It was, as I've gone through the mental gymnastics of this, you know, the conversation that I anticipate would happen is kind of getting to where, and to me, I'm starting to try to shut this down because we have a couple more things on it, is we're gonna land where we're landing, and that is, it's the dependencies that are going to drive some of the decision that we're going to have to make later based on construction management and their expertise, and overlaying, again, technology, money, formula dollars, facility audit dollars, and then all the construction, all of those overlays together that only the experts can really drive. And I expected the conversation that, remember, the easiest conversation is that we need an elementary school and we need a middle school. We know that. The rest of the stuff we landed on some dependencies that we don't know in construction management. So we need to be prepared that this is where we're starting, and even assuming the bond passes, even subsequent to that, we might have to make some changes based on what's the most economical and efficient way of doing this for the district, with a qualifier that there's some things that might be economical and efficient to do it here, but it's not practical to do it until, I'm gonna make this up, in the summer, whatever that is. So Dr. Hatchley, kind of, is that a little closer?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Street, I know
Yes.
this is my last comment, and then we can hopefully finish, but I found it very serendipitous that we were going to be talking about this bond prioritization, plus in EL 2.0 that we discussed earlier, there is and that is, to remind all of you, the global executive constraint there is the sentence in there that the primary responsibility of the district is to promote learning and equity for every student and staff member while maintaining the highest educational standards and professionalism. So I think that is exactly what we were all saying in more specific ways, but as long as that is our driving, our guiding force, and that should be, will be well said.
Well, thank you. What I anticipate is, by the next board meeting, if that's achievable from a timeline, it's a couple of weeks, is that too fast? Okay, a couple of weeks, and then we'll take another shot at it and look through, and then if we can polish it a little bit more, then we'll continue to do that. Thank you for the conversation. CASB legislative resolution discussion. Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Street. Okay, so because you're all fabulously well-prepared people.
Thank you, Henry.
Yes, thank you. I am grateful for all of you reviewing the latest, the 2016 CASB legislative resolution book. I also want to thank Katrina Adad for getting it out to all of us in the board packet, and acknowledge that Mrs. Van Mater and myself both are on the CASB Legislative Resolution Committee. Mrs. Van Mater as ex parte with her presence on the Federal Relations Network Committee. So, as you probably know, the CASB Delegate Assembly will be October 14th and 15th. That's next weekend. And while the book has been considerably streamlined, as I find to be thrilling, and hopefully you too, I wanted to check with you to see if, after your review, there were any of the proposed resolutions or even the standing resolutions that you would like to give me questions or discuss here, or is there anything particular you wouldn't like me to vote for? I'm open to your comments and suggestions and eager to carry them out.
Questions and comments?
Please tell me you don't want me to vote for everything. Positive. Is there anything that you had some concerns about?
I just have a clarifying question.
Mhm.
So the booklet used to have resolutions already there, then it had additions, and I know you streamlined it, so is everything being voted on this time? Because I don't see the standing thing anymore. All I see, everything is new.
Well, the three standings, did you see them?
Oh, the one that says local governance,
Yes.
finance.
Those are the three pillars.
So that's what used to be like 10 pages and you put it into half a page?
Yes.
Wow.
And then all the ones that are being proposed, other than those, are sort of rebuilding the book. It's not that, nobody hopes it will reach its earlier its latest stature, or in terms of width, but this is a start to make it a little more timely, a little more succinct, a lot more succinct, and more focused on what exactly. I mean, personally, my favorite one is the restoration of governmental immunity. There's some other good ones in there. There's some others that are question marks.
Yeah, I agreed. I thought some were question marks, but there weren't really any that I had major heartburn. There were some that don't apply to us, like the bargaining and executive session and stuff.
Mr.
I would hope and vigorously support governmental immunity.
I was waiting for that.
I'm calling it the Larry Borland
And
resolution.
that's all I have to say about that.
Ms.
Well,
Almeida?
yes.
Sorry, I can't seem to locate the document right now, but I'm very familiar with it.
It was yesterday.
Yeah.
The update to the agenda, it says.
Yesterday, 8:50.
But you can also,
Katrina.
yeah,
Can't.
you can also find it in your email from CASB. Conference, it says
Yeah,
CAS
'cause it's not in
conference.
the board packet.
Yeah, I can't, not locating it, but anyway, what I was going to say was, I'm very familiar with it, and you will see that there is a resolution in there about contracts and about people being able to work for more than one district.
Is that number 10?
Well-
Because when I read the thing, that's what I thought it sounded like, but when you read the rationale, it sounds completely different.
Well, that resolution started out a little bit more obviously related to, the potential of someone working for two districts at the same time, if you will, if you can imagine that. However, because that seemed to be a little, obtuse to a lot of people's experience, they broadened it to make it, to encompass more than one scenario, and that is why it references small districts being impacted negatively by 30-day, less than 30-day notice of the departure, and so this really is a more universal or just a more broad-based stating of the same concept that contract should be reliable, have certain parameters that can be relied upon.
Sorry,
So
I
is
guess
it
that
about-
wasn't what I was looking at originally.
Number 10?
It was during the resolution committee consideration of these, there was a significant amount of questioning regarding the earlier wording, so I'm thinking this is what was settled on. Mike Johnson of Denver Public Schools, he's Denver Public School attorney. He sort of led the questioning. It wasn't that there was opposition, but just it didn't seem to be pertinent to most people or most school districts' experience in its first iteration. And I'm actually grateful that they took the good idea that was found in the first one and sort of gave it some added perspective and appeal to those outside, just a broader appeal.
So are you saying most school districts didn't find that? Because, yeah, what I was looking at was the original one, and I guess that's when we were in the FRN meeting, and that, I mean, it spoke straight up to the idea of employees cannot contract for two different districts simultaneously, and when working for one would prevent them from honoring their obligations in another.
Yes,
And
and
straight up that, so that got
well,
changed.
as you might, yes, it did, because as you probably wouldn't be surprised, the same objection that we heard earlier in discussing this matter was, well, why don't you just incorporate that term into your own contracts? And it wasn't a winner in terms of its first version.
Interesting, because everyone at FRN was completely on board with it, and Matt Cook was supporting it.
Well, I think the
And
support
that it was appropriate because the idea being that rather than leaving it up to everyone to do it on their own, let's just pass a law. It seems reasonable that if you enter into one contract that conflicts with another, that you would break the law.
Well, Ms.
Rather
Lanier, you're
than-
being too logical.
And oops.
And so, as I said, I'm actually, I'm really appreciative, and it's testament to the support that Matt Cook and others had for this resolution that it exists in its current form. It's actually trying to maintain the same concept, but make it more applicable, more broadly applicable.
Yes, I have a question about number 12. It talks about the PSAT and the SAT. While I support the concept, do we still want to push them to go back to the ACT? Dr. Hatchell, have we given up on that, or we?
I believe the ship has sailed.
Really?
So my question is, I'm wondering why Pooter submitted this.
Twitter submitted far and away.
Well, they submitted a lot, but I'm wondering, like Dr. Hatchell said, that was my thought, the ship has sailed, and it's already happening, so why are we
No,
asking
they're-
CASB?
Oh, because they're wanting
I'm
them
looking.
to use PSAT PSAT for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade.
And that was, well received by the committee.
Oh, I see what you're saying,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yes, I didn't catch that piece the first time, you're right. It's
Yeah.
about 9th grade, which is not
Yeah.
what we're doing right now with PSAT.
Right.
Right now
So-
it's Park and
How, what would that look like then, to use them for 9th grade? Are they saying they want to require students to take them in 9th grade and then retake them?
the PSAT.
Yes, but isn't that usually taken in 10th grade?
It is. I think it's some sort of.
Is there a 9th grade test that you had to?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
The
ninth
CMAS.
grade park test.
No, PSAT. Is there a 9th grade PSAT?
No.
10.
Right?
Typically, you take it your sophomore year, but you can take it your freshman year.
Okay, most kids take it for
But the state, so since the state pays for it, your 10th, well, you can see from this that it doesn't carry the legislative resolutions submitted with recommendation. It's just, the fact that there's no recommendation associated with this doesn't mean that there was majority. There's more just like, hey, we'll put this out on the floor and see what people say.
Well, I think I understand their logic in that they're trying to get away from park and other things, but the problem is you're taking a test, PSAT, which is basically designed for 10th graders, and you're asking 9th graders to take it and then talk about our academic results. PSAT requires, as I understand it, most kids to have completed algebra and geometry, which, I mean, puts a lot of our typically able kids at a disadvantage if they're taking it in 9th grade. So I'm trying to understand what they're trying to do.
Well,
It doesn't seem to me like it would
Isn't
be
there-
advantageous.
I'm not recalling specifically, but there is something in my mind it goes back to the fact that federal testing counts 9th grade not as high school, correct? What is that?
Yes. So
So-
are they
so they're
trying
trying
to say
to-
through this that it's an option? They don't want every kid to have to take PSAT or SAT. They want it as an option? Is that what they're saying? Because
I think they
that,
want it instead of park is how I read it.
see, I'm not sure what they
And-
mean, and so perhaps during floor discussion, you'll find out.
Unless it's just that, we were all so well prepared for the ACT by the state test that we have, and there's really no comparable mechanism in place from state testing, that they're thinking that if you take it more than once, that you'll be all set for the SAT, or even the PSAT.
Well, perhaps, but I would think that there would be some school districts, particularly those that are on watch or those that are, struggling with their academic achievement, that would not want their typical 9th grader to have to take a test that wasn't designed for a 9th grader. It was designed for 10th graders, which is why it's administered in 10th grade. So I guess that would be my question, and I would trust you, Mrs. Johnson, to represent us in that regard.
Thank you.
And, try to determine, this one looks to me like it's going to get amended on the floor, because Mrs. Bullock and I both sitting here are reading it two different ways. I think there's more than one interpretation of the way it's written. So I think we need to determine that, because if we're asking CASB to support the idea of that would be the test, I don't think that I can agree with that, because I don't think it was designed for that purpose. And I don't think that it's a very good idea, and I think it's patently unfair to our kids to ask them to take a test that they haven't all had the curriculum to date that would make them successful. And I think it would be particularly bad for some of those smaller districts or some of those districts where their kids are really struggling with academic achievement. So those would be my concerns, so.
I will definitely voice them.
Any others? You have your guidance? Mrs. Johnson?
Indeed.
Okay.
Ample. Thank you. Thank you all.
GP 4.4 and GP 4.6 Board of Education Policy Language Review. Mrs. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Street. So, again,